The Chimney Sweeper occupies a central place in William Blake's Songs of Innocence and of Experience, appearing in two distinct versions that together enact Blake's doctrine of Contraries. Through these paired poems, Blake exposes the brutal realities of child labor in 18th century England, while simultaneously interrogating the ideological systems that normalize and justify such suffering. Far from being simple protest lyrics, the Chimney Sweeper poems constitute a sophisticated moral and psychological critique of social oppression and the manipulation of innocence. In Songs of Innocence, the Chimney Sweeper is narrated by a child who has been sold into labor after the death of his mother. The poem's tone is gentle, even tender, and its diction deliberately simple. The speaker recounts the suffering of Tom Dacre, whose head is shaved and who dreams of angelic liberation from soot-filled coffins. This dream vision is crucial. It offers consolation through the promise of divine reward, suggesting that obedience and goodness will be recompensed in heaven. On the surface, the poem appears to endorse Christian patience and hope, yet Blake's irony is subtle and unsettling. The very necessity of such consolation exposes the cruelty of a society that requires children to endure misery now for the sake of imagined future salvation. Critics such as M.H. Abrams have emphasized that the Innocence poem does not simply celebrate faith. Rather, it dramatizes how innocence survives by transforming suffering into hope. The child's belief in angelic rescue is both moving and tragic, for it reveals the psychological mechanisms by which oppression is made bearable. Blake allows the child to speak in his own voice, thereby preserving the purity of innocence whilst quietly indicting the adults and institutions that exploit it. The poem's final moral, "So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm," is deeply ironic, as the reader recognizes that duty, in this context, serves the interests of power rather than justice. The Chimney Sweeper, in Songs of Experience, offers a starkly different perspective. Here, the child speaks not from innocence, but from bitter awareness. He directly accuses his parents and the institutions of church and state of responsibility for his suffering. The poem's language is sharper, its tone accusatory rather than consolatory. Religion is no longer a source of comfort, but a mechanism of repression, enabling parents to soothe their consciences whilst their child labors in misery. Blake exposes what he elsewhere calls mind-forg'd manacles, the internalized beliefs that allow injustice to persist without overt coercion. The contrast between the two poems reveals Blake's central insight. Innocence is not ignorance, and experience is not wisdom alone. Innocence perceives the world through trust and imagination, whilst experience exposes the structures of power and hypocrisy that deform human life. Yet experience, too, is a form of suffering, for it involves the loss of comforting illusions. Blake refuses to privilege one state over the other. Instead, he insists that truth emerges through their tension. As Frye observes, Blake's social criticism is most powerful precisely because it allows oppressed voices to speak from within their own psychological conditions. Formally, Blake's use of simple lyric forms intensifies rather than diminishes the poem's impact. The nursery rhyme rhythms and plain diction mirror the child's voice, making the social critique all the more devastating. Blake's technique of illuminated printing further reinforces meaning. The visual imagery accompanying the poems creates a dialogue between text and image that heightens emotional and moral response. From a historical perspective, the Chimney Sweeper poems are amongst the earliest and most powerful literary representations of industrial child labor. Blake anticipates later Victorian social reform literature by nearly a century, yet his approach remains distinctively visionary rather than documentary. He does not merely record suffering, he reveals how ideology, belief, and language collaborate to sustain injustice. In conclusion, The Chimney Sweeper stands as one of Blake's most enduring contributions to English literature because it unites lyric beauty with radical social critique. Through the paired voices of innocence and experience, Blake exposes the moral cost of a society that sacrifices children to economic and religious systems. For postgraduate and serious readers, the poem offers a profound study of how suffering is both endured and explained, and how poetry can make visible the hidden structures that shape human misery.